All right, good afternoon, everyone. It is July 21st. It is 2:05 PM and it's bargaining session between LCEA and LCS. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass the signing sheet around so everybody can sign for today. And then pass the agenda for me, please. I'm also going to pass the agenda around, but I'm gonna change the order of the agenda a little bit, okay?
It's another.
Well, don't buy on the pad.
Listen, I'm not coming in here.
Oh, okay.
I'm giving most of them. Yeah, but it's a good. Yeah, I'm saying.
All right. And with that said, I am going to move the budget status update first. Because you have requested Scott to come to this meeting. So he's here, he's gonna have a presentation. And then he'll be able to answer any questions at that time before he gets to leave. So I wanna make sure you guys have an opportunity to talk to him. So with that said, Mr. Ward, floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I know it says the budget update, but I know y'all's question was more about the fund balance and where they are on that. Before I get into that, I think that's a great question. But I think it's a very dangerous answer if you don't get some commentary with it. So I didn't want to just walk in and say, hey, this is where I think our fund balance is today. Without giving you some context with that. So this is what's been happening with our fund balance ratio. You can see, starting in 2018, the orange line is the available balance, available fund balance. There's 5 categories of fund balance. One of them we don't use. 2 of them, one of them is non-spendable. That's like inventory. So, you can't buy anything with inventory. The other one is restricted. This is the part that's restricted to specific state and local requirements. They're legally bound. We cannot spend them any other way. And then there's assigned and unassigned. So our available balance here is our assigned and our unassigned. We have assigned balance, which we reserve for certain things like existing purchase orders that are outstanding. But we still have the ability to cancel those purchase orders and reissue new ones. But we show them as assigned. So we use them in the state's calculation of our fund balance ratio. So the fund balance ratio is your unassigned and assigned fund balances divided by your revenue. So it's the ability of how much you have in reserve in comparison to the revenues that the district will receive throughout the year. So you can see, the 2018, we are barely over 2%. All the way up until 2024, we were up to almost 15%, 14.9%. And then last year we ended around 9%. And then right now, currently, we're still working on closing out last year. But right now we're about 5% ratio. At 4%, we have gone below the district's school board policy. At 3%, we have gone below the state's threshold, and we have to declare emergency and contact the Commissioner of Education. So just to kind of give you a heads up where we are, we're getting close. I also have on here dollar wise where everything is. You can see at one point in time, we were up to about $65 million. And right now we're about 24 million for the end of 2026. So you can see sharp decline in the last 2 years. So I felt like that I could end there, but I don't think that that would be enough context to figure out what's really going on. So there are a couple of drivers that are doing this. By far, the main driver that we're dealing with is student enrollment. Okay, so you have 1920, you have 2021. 2021 is the year post-COVID. That is the year that we didn't have required brick and mortar. And that was when we had a lot of students that did not enroll into our district during that year post-COVID. But you can see 21, 22, we started climbing back all the way up to 24, 25. Now, we, the district, traditional schools, we are the dark blue and the orange. The orange is virtual, but there's still our school virtual, not Florida virtual, but late virtual. So you can see starting in 23, 24, we peaked. We started declining 24, 25, 25, 26, and then 26, 27. And as you can see, the green is the charter school, slight expansion, but by far the expansion of total students are public, or excuse me, private school voucher and homeschool voucher students. Okay. Now, I'm sorry, but my notes are not showing up, so give me just a second. Because I want to make sure I cover all of this. So 24, 25 enrollment declined 624 students for the district, resulting in a $5.4 million reduction in funding. 25, 26, I don't know why that stopped. 25, 26. Enrollment declined an additional 869 FTE, resulting in an additional $7.8 million reduction in revenue. 26, 27 enrollment is projected to decrease an additional 824 FTE, resulting in a cumulative reduction since 24, 25 of 2,317 students, or a $20.8 million reduction in annual revenue. So we're down $20 million from where we were 23, 24. The 3-year impact due to declining enrollment is $39.4 million. So since this start of decline from here to here, the cumulative total is $39.4 million. Is that you, but not me? Is that why that is?
No, because you're reading from a different side, so it's only presenting the slide, not anything else. It's you, it's on the screen. You're a presenter.
It's all my page.
Yeah.
All right, so see if I can.
Scott, while you're getting back, what was that last figure, the 20.8? Was it 20.8 million? What was that number?
So 3-year cumulative impact is $39.4 million.
Yeah, I'm talking about that last projected school.
Reduction in annual
You
revenue.
got 5 million?
20.8, yes, yes, for this current year, 20.8. Give me a second to combine all
No
those
problem.
screens.
So that 2,300 number is not new decline, that's a total decline.
Say that number again.
You said 2,300.
That is the cumulative decline since 23, 24.
When you're not
That's
presenting.
fine. I'm gonna stay in this one so they can see the notes. So again, $39.4 million reduction.
Mhm.
That's a $40 million reduction. So that's almost directly what's impacting our fund balance going down. Now, we've made some changes, we've made some adjustments, we've cut some positions. But there are other factors that are causing increasing costs. So a lot of that's negated back out. It's kind of a give some, lose some, win some. But if you can see, the most contributing factor to the decline in our fund balance has been our enrollment. The other issue that we have that's probably one of the higher increases that we've been trying to mitigate against is our health insurance plan. Our employee health insurance is self-funded, which means 100% of the claims we have to pay for. We do reinsure high cost claimants. So if you have someone that has extremely high cost, we are reinsured for that, so that they will cover that. But the majority of our claims, when we go to doctors and hospitals and all of the other pharmacy and everything else, every dollar spent is a dollar that comes out of our budget. It is self-insured. As you can see from the graph, we've been experiencing $4.5 to $5 million increases each year. We have not completed the 25-26 year yet. We have all the revenues in, but we don't have all the expenditures. So I know it shows that it's a decrease, but we are not there yet. So we've got to get the rest of the expenditures in. So I see that curve going back up some. I don't know if it'll be more or less, that curve's going back up. And then for the next year, our expenses are projected to increase $67.7 million, which is that last increase right there. Every dollar that goes into this health insurance plan is a dollar that's not left on the table for anything else. Okay, so that's why health insurance has become an issue, a hot topic issue, and why we have to keep addressing it year after year. And then these are kind of the short-term things that have impacted us the last 3 or 4 years. Yes.
So that, 67.7 million for the fiscal year, is that the increased change amount from this year to next year, or is that the total projected cost?
The total projected cost is 67.7 million. And that is employee and employer revenue covering that cost.
And how much of a difference is that from this previous year? You know?
Well, you can't go off of this year because it's not finished yet.
Right,
Right now, we've got 65 million.
okay,
But the previous year, which will be 25, is 66 million. So here is the long-term systemic issue with funding that results in salary issues. Okay? I'm going all the way back to 2023. I think that's a good year to start off with. That was prior to the first housing boom in Florida. Okay? Back then, our base student allocation. So understand what the base student allocation is. The base student allocation is the base amount of funding that we receive per student. It is what the FEFP formula is built off of. There are some other funding mechanisms that are out there, but the majority of them are specific in how you can spend them. They're restricted. ESE guarantee, transportation, school safety, mental health. And by the way, all of those have requirements that cost more than the funding that the state gives us. But this is the primary driver of the funding that we have to address compensation with for our district. So you can see since the beginning. So when you look at this light blue line, you can see that it started dipping after the housing crisis, continued to dip all the way to 2013, began a modest increase until 2016. Our legislators flatlined it for a number of years and then began to grow it back again 2021, 22, 23, 24. And now we're back at this line here, which is about $5,600 per student. If you start in 2003, 2004, and create what is the trend line for the BSA, it is 1.0184%. A little over 1%. So when we get asked, why can't we have 3% and 4% year raises every year? It's because our funding that we get from the state, which we have no control over, is less. It is 1% plus. Some years we get 3%. In those years, we try to follow that with the BSA and put money on the table that equals that. Some years we get nothing. But over a 24-year period, it's a little over 1.08%. So less than 1.1%. So if you take the consumer price index, which is the cost of goods, and you index the BSA from 2003, 2004, you can see that we are nowhere keeping close to the price index, which is the cost of buying goods in your district or in your home or anywhere else in the nation. This is the nation's CPI, Consumer Price Index. So we're not even keeping up with the cost of goods sold. Then the green line, which goes across the top, is the Employment Cost Index. That is a national employee cost index. It includes both governmental and non-governmental employees. And you can see we are far behind that in funding. So we are not being funded to keep up with the rest of the nation, either in cost of goods sold or in salaries and benefits. Okay, so you can take the difference between here, the amount we need to keep up with the cost of salaries and benefits, and where we are, $1,300 per student. When you multiply that $1,300 per student against the 35,000 students that we have in our traditional schools, you're looking at a shortfall of over $50 million per year. So if we were being funded at a level that kept up with the national level of salaries and benefits, we would have an additional $50 million in funding for salaries that we don't have. And we have no control over that. Okay? That doesn't change. This is the VSA, but that doesn't account or adjust for any of the changes in the VSA over time, including when they rolled categoricals into there, like transportation, or not transportation, instruction materials, the reading allocation, classroom teacher supplies, all used to be funded outside. TSIA, teacher salary increase, used to be funded outside. Now it's inside. So all of that waters down the impact or the increase that we should have gotten and didn't get. All of that was funded originally in there. Also, if you'll recall, in 2022-23, we got a substantial increase in our VSA, but we also got hit with the requirement that we had a new minimum wage before everybody else in the state, that we had to go to $15 per hour overnight. And I know that that didn't impact teacher salaries at all. However, the majority of our other outside of teaching, those positions, the majority of those were lower level pay positions, such as our bus drivers, our TAs, our food service workers, who all overnight had to get a substantial increase, which tied up the majority of that funding. So you can see we have two issues today. One, we are not being funded anywhere near where we're supposed to be funded at, which we have no control over. That is a state level issue, not a county level issue. And we have the issue of our fund balance and our enrollment being down. So we don't have a lot of money in the bank to front money that we don't have. We have to have more reoccurring revenue before we address reoccurring expenditures. And that's why I don't make decisions, I make recommendations. That's why I recommend that we hold off on anything other than the required TSIA portion that we have to do by statute this month. Because we don't know what our enrollments are until kids come back in our seats. And we know that we don't have a lot of money in the bank to make can't make reoccurring increases on, because we don't have reoccurring revenues. So before I go, because I don't like to sit around forever, is there any questions that you guys have for me?
Yes, I have about 4 questions right now, but some of these questions are less for me and more for the broader audience. And before I get into that, I'm curious if Patrick or Bobby or Jessica has anything specific numbers wise or more into the details that was presented before I get into bigger, broader.
Well, I have a question. You said that your recommendation was to wait until when to discuss it?
Well, right now, we have no money in the bank, or low money in the bank,
Right,
and we don't know what our enrollments are.
right.
So right now, the data that we're looking at, which is very preliminary, is we may not even meet projections, which means we may not even have the money that we're budgeting for. Because if the FTE doesn't come and the enrollments don't come, then our budget revenues will go down even further.
So what I'm hearing is you're recommending until after the first FTE.
That would be my recommendation.
That's-
Yes, yes.
Bobby, Patrick. So first, Scott, I want to say how much I appreciate you coming and doing this for us. As I'm sure Guido expressed, there was a lot of frustration at last session because we don't have all the data and information, and it helps to make informed decisions to have the information. So I really appreciate that, and I think it will help our educators understand the situation and what's going on moving forward and be able to make good recommendations and decisions. That is a frustration that we deal with a lot. I'm sure as y'all are aware, you probably get some of the same questions that we get, but we just don't have the information to be able to answer them appropriately. So this helps a lot. The couple questions that I had. Could you, and I know they're not in your slides, but I'm hoping, so I know you work with budget numbers a lot, hoping maybe you have some of this in memory, but if not, you can get back to us on this. But could you share some of the cuts and changes that were made since 2023 to address the enrollment decline and increased cost?
Yes, I can. I can't do it today off of memory, but I can get the information to you.
Okay, perfect. And with that, could you also get us because you shared with us today the 3-year impacts of the reduction, right? The 39 million reduction. Could you also share the 3-year cumulative savings that the district has saved by making those changes and cuts?
Yes. Yeah, when I give you the positions, it'll come with amounts that you can use to see what the offset is.
Perfect.
So if I'm looking at this right, you said enrollment, health insurance costs and underfunded in the BSA on a national level. Those are like the 3 primary things that's
BSA would be the state level.
the state level, okay. But so enrollment in health insurance too, it seems like all of this is directly affected by state policy.
Absolutely,
Will we all be in agreement of that?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so. Okay, so this is a state policy thing,
This is a state issue, absolutely.
okay.
So my next question is, could you explain a little bit, and again, this is more for the broader audience, why some of our neighboring districts, for example, like Orange or Sumter County, have a different funding amount than Lake County Schools?
Yeah, so funding, the FEFP has several parts of formula associated with it. So small school districts get a higher rate. Large school districts have higher tax values. But different ESC guaranteed amounts. So there's a lot of different factors that go into the total FEFP formula. It seems as if the middle districts and the middle size and middle state districts seem to be, on the ones that are usually on the lower funded level. We are typically around between 63 and 61 out of 67 school districts in our funding. If you'll look, Osceola is very similar, Polk is very similar, Marion's very similar. Orange County, when you look at the FEFP formula, would not be that far off. However, Orange County also has a 1 mil like we do, or we have a 0.75, and they also have a sales tax referendum for a lot of their capital. And because they have a lot of extra capital funding, they don't have to transfer as much from capital into their, they can transfer more into their general fund from their capital funds without hurting their capital program. If you look at, I don't know all of our districts and what their offers have been to this point in time. I know Orange County sits above 20% fund balance, where we're talking at 5%. If I was at a 20% fund balance, this would be a no-brainer. But I can't take risk when I don't have money in the bank. My tolerance for risk is much lower. So Seminole County, I believe, has close to 20%, if not more. Charlotte County, which I know has settled, and add money to their TSIA, was well above 15%. Suwannee County, much smaller school district, they followed suit too. They were over a 14% fund balance. So yeah, if you have a 14, 15 plus fund balance, we can continue to talk about the other compensation. But when you have limited funding and nothing in the bank to bank on, then you're gonna have to wait, or you're gonna take a risk of bankrupt this.
So, I appreciate that. The, follow-up question to that then, and I'm not sure if this is a question to you or who would be the best person to ask, but could you also explain, because I know there's been some conversation at, school board meetings, especially with, Chair Bill Mathias, on trying to look at how can we push back on the state allocation, what they're giving us. Do you know, or could you speak to what has the district done to address the inequities in our funding balance compared to our?
I know it's been discussed several times. I know it's been discussed with our local delegation. I've discussed it with our local delegation. I know our board members have discussed it with the delegation. There's just not a lot of conversation in Tallahassee. They have an agenda that they are following. And it's extremely hard to have a conversation with any legislator that's contrary to their agenda. I've had the privilege to be able to go over to speak. I was at a committee meeting at the House Appropriations Committee early last year, when we were talking about the issues with the scholarships. And I would actually mention the impact it's having on our teacher salaries. But that's a rare opportunity for anybody in the state to be able to get in front of our legislators and have that conversation. So we're advocating as hard as we can for better funding for our teachers and everyone else.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate those efforts. I appreciate you sharing that.
Well,
Another question I had, and again, I'm not sure if you can speak to this at all, but could you either get back to us on this or try to answer what is the district doing to attract students back and
we'd have to back me.
Okay. And then do you know if the duplicate enrollment is still an ongoing issue for us here in Lane?
So there's still duplicate enrollment. It's not the same duplicate enrollment that we were having in the past.
Okay.
The duplicate enrollment before was they were literally paying them for students that were sitting in our classrooms, no matter when. The Department of Education has done a lot better job at the reconciliation, because they're actually sending us the records and our IT department's reconciling them and sending them back. There's still a part of duplication by the way that the statute states to pay them, being the scholarship funding organizations, and that is all public schools are funded based on 2 student counts, October, February count. Okay. And Florida virtual, charter school, no matter what, they all are in the same rules or same measurement. Whereas the scholarship organizations, if a student leaves after October, they are now being funded immediately. So we can have them in our October count and they could leave in November. And we will not get funded for that October count because they moved and went in November. That part is not a DOE issue. That is a state legislative issue that has to be worked on between the funding mechanism of private school scholarship organizations and the funding mechanism for public school.
Thank you, that's helpful information. And then. Just had a question, and it escaped me. Ah, okay, sorry. And then could you also speak to what the district is doing to try to recuperate some of the funds for some of the services that we're providing? Because I understand, you know, obviously by state law, we have to provide certain services to private entities, or charter entities. And I understand that we've tried to make some changes to look at some of the service that we're providing and billing for those services. Could you speak to that at all? Try to.
So we do bill for charter services.
Okay.
We have a fee schedule. We review that fee schedule based on cost every year. We have it board approved. And then as the charters request the services from our departments are responsible for initiating and billing them and what's for those services. As far as private schools, we don't provide services to private schools other than those that are required by federal grants, ESE, Title I, those kind of grants. And we allocate that to them based on the formulas given to us by the state, by the federal government. We are opening up opportunity for scholarship students to come in and take certain services directly. We are a vendor for Step Up for Students. But I caution us to be very careful. We don't want to expand cost just to gain more revenue. We want to keep our costs the same. So if we have a class of kids and we can add a kid to a class and get additional revenue for it, absolutely. But I don't want to go out and hire more people just to provide more services on the hopes that we get enough revenue to cover that.
Yes. So I have a question. I know that we were hearing that, there's some staff that we have currently that are testing, private school kids to see if they qualify for ESE. Did we get anything for that? Or
So part of that we are required to do because we're receiving the federal grant. I can't speak on everything that we are doing, but I know that we are required to provide the child find services and those other kind of evaluation services to everybody as part of the grant. ESE department probably could explain that a lot better
Yeah,
and clearer than I can.
our understanding from talking to educators that provide student services that their workload for the private sector and for scholarship students has increased significantly.
Substantially, yes. And I'm hearing that across the state, not from our people. I'm hearing from others that because there's a lot more dollars tied to that, that the private schools are pushing for a lot more evaluations of their students so that they can get more money.
And we are required by law to provide those evaluations.
My understanding, yes. Not from our ESC department, but from the statewide conversation.
So, focusing on, just so I can understand it a little bit more, we were talking about some of our surrounding counties that had a higher fund balances.
Sure.
And, one of our members has spoken with some of our representatives and their statement was that our school funding is a local issue, not a state level issue, which is kind of the opposite of what you said. So I'm thinking that they're sort of referring to the things like the referendum, like you're saying, some of the counties have like a 1 mil and we have a 0.75. What would your response be if you heard that from them?
I will tell you that the local millage, the voter approved local millage is definitely a helpful source of funding. Just to address the requirements and law that the state didn't fund properly. I will tell you that our local tax rate, our required local effort is set by the legislators. Our statutes that allow us to make any of those adjustments are all set by the legislators. So if we're not being funded by that BSA, which is set by the legislators, then I don't think that's a local issue, that's a state issue.
So,
And I may regret saying that, but yes, absolutely.
so what I'm hearing you say is that, well, yes, some of that's coming from our local taxpayers, that's coming from the property taxes. And, but the policies and the procedures that we have to go by in order to either get these funds or use these funds is set by the state legislature.
The level of funding, the formula that they use is set by the legislators, correct? And, you know, we have on a sidebar conversation about our local taxpayers. Our property values have gone up substantially in the state of Florida. But when you look at where that money went, it did go to the local school districts. However, the state funding shifted from the local school districts to the voucher program. So when you look at we have about a $5.5 billion increase in local tax support for public education in Florida. And we have about a $5.5 billion increase in scholarship funding. So it's just pulling funding from our local tax dollars to fund private education.
How are the vouchers tracked?
Good question.
Well, the money for the vouchers tracked. Do you know?
Great question.
Okay. Do you know how much, money this year for vouchers and charters went out from from what was in our budget?
I don't know off the top of my head. You can look at our FEFP run and you can see how much is going out. But remember, that is FTE, straight up FTE, but the FTE and the amount that they send out do not match. They send out more money than the FTE that they give us. And it's because of that, I spoke earlier about, we have FTE in October, but then they still send money out in November. So there's always a difference between the two.
Is there a way to recover the money that the state owes us for some of this mismanagement?
They
They
make adjustments to us and send money back, but there's no data to go along with it for us to check or cross-check what it's for.
Like, here's some money, but no information about where it's taken.
Prior to this last year, we didn't even get the list of students that they were paying. We now get that list. That's part of our check process. Their check process that they started last year.
So if we get a new student that comes into our school, say in like November, we have no way to know whether they have already received a voucher.
We now can, before we could not, we now can look and see where they in that first quarter payment file to the two scholarship funding organizations.
Mhm.
We can do that now, but we could not prior to last year.
So could then we could go to state.
And well, what was happening on, parents were signing up for scholarships. Scholarship organizations were asking for the funding from the state and receiving it. And the students were enrolling directly into our schools and were there the entire year. Now, would they have caught that at some point in time? I can't tell you, but that was some of the funding that was coming back. But they don't, because of the way the statute's written, the scholarship organization holds on to the funding for multiple years before they send it back to the school district. Send it back to the Department of Education for the Department of Education to send it back to the school district.
So we're still waiting on funds basically from the first year of vouchers.
Correct.
Potentially. And now that we get the list of students that might be duplicate enrolled or might have been here and then left or gotten the money and then paid. We're still not getting that money back,
Right,
And that.
we are some,
but
but
not necessarily for
But we
all.
don't have enough information to determine if it's all, or what scholarships are being reimbursed. How long ago was the money, was it 2 years ago, was it 3 years ago, we don't know, we have no idea.
I know Jessica asked about how much money for this year's vouchers and charters. My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for example, like the TSIA or CTISIA monies, we had to take out a portion for charters. That's correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then do you know how much money was taken for the charter allocation?
I do, but I'm not, I can get that to you, the charter and the scholarships.
Okay,
It is based, the TSIA is based on our base funding. Not what they put in the runs, but our actual base funding that our schools, that our teachers are being paid for.
and my understanding is the rules for the CTSI allocations apply to charters, so the charter school would just still have to do a similar,
They have to do a plan, they have to do.
just like the district does, but privates just receive that pot of money and then they don't really have some rules or stipulations on that money, is that correct?
Right. The money technically doesn't go to the private school, the money goes to the parent.
Parents.
So I have a question, Lake Texans are part of our district, but they're a higher education, do they receive any of the TSAI funds?
Very limited, because the majority of the funding that flows to Lake Tech is based on a handful of dual enrolled students. They have very small FTE. Most of their stuff is outside of our FEFP formula. Charter school payments, TSIA are all based on FEFP formula. So very little. They get very little funding, but they have to meet the same salary requirements that we do because they're part of it.
Whatever portion they get, it will be, they have to submit a plan.
You have to what?
They
Whatever,
cut Smith plan.
they still have to submit a plan, whatever portion they get, they have to submit a
So
plan.
their
Well,
plan-
Technically, they include we include Lake Tech in our plan because they are still technically our employees.
Right, and that's my understanding too, because they're part of our bargaining unit, so.
But they have to meet whatever we do with our TSI, they have to match it with their funding, so they don't necessarily get the funding to match.
Okay, so I guess the reason I'm asking, if that's the case, then why are we including them in our data? To pay them if they're not getting any of that money? If they're not getting that money for that. So when we figure out how many people are in each category. Why are we including them if that's not going to them? And it's in our pot.
It's not hurting the pie, we're using the district's total BSA funding to measure it.
No,
They're-
it's not hurting the.
So they're helping
The
the pot.
amount,
You're talking about for
I'm talking
estimating,
about when you're estimating and we're trying to figure out how many teachers it applies to. The ones that are on Lake Tech is included in that list.
So
Should we
are you
exclude them?
including Lake Tech in
I
on that?
believe I had it in the count, but then what I'm addressing today in language. Will readjust according to people that qualify. So I wrote new language to include your experience bands with the numbers specified that you had and language that stipulates if the numbers decline, the pot increases for the bands. If the pot is smaller because there's a lot more people, then the bands decrease. I have to get to that so that I can explain it. But I will have to address Lake Tech separate on dollars because I don't know how much money they have.
So when we calculate the amount per teacher, it won't include Lake Tech's revenue and it won't include Lake Tech's teacher.
Correct. I will have to pull them.
so. The problem with that is they're still part of our bargaining. So we still negotiate their increases. So are you saying that we then need to negotiate a separate plan for Lake Tech?
They still have to follow our plan.
They have
They
to-
still have to take their funding and match our plan.
Correct.
But they have.
So what we agreed to, the MOU on the CTSI would apply to Lake Tech educators. It would just be, they would have to figure out the funding source.
Yes,
Correct, the difference of whatever
and
they.
they've had to do that every year with
And
TSI.
in this case, they would have to follow the same only for like for our, the 10 years.
10 years and above, yeah, because they're Lake County employees, correct.
So it applies to them. But the funding and the impact to the teacher does not apply to us. Anything else?
Yes, generally speaking, it feels like one big squeeze at this moment. If we're looking, if teachers are looking, if educators in the district is looking to the district and the board for the aid, and the constant response is, it's out of our hands, you gotta go to the state. Why don't we, the district, go to the state? Like, why does it always feel like it's partitioned and party line between the workers, the directors and the state? It's like the state squeezing the district squeezing the sites, work sites. And if that's the case, what can we do together collaboratively to get us the increase we need? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Why is that conversation for me?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I've gone to the state. I know you guys represent, you go through FEA. I know FEA has people, we run into each other from time to time. We
Right.
talk to the same people. I don't have a clear answer for that. All I know is the more we fight between each other, the less effective we are there. So, you know, we can't do that. I think everybody has to understand where the problem is before it can be effectively addressed. And I think if our teachers are mad at our board members, our superintendent and our HR and CFO, you're mad at the people who are going to Tallahassee and trying to battle for you. I mean, I've gone to Tallahassee several times. I've talked to several staffers that sit on the appropriation committees and said, hey, we gotta do something. And
So in the nutshell, I don't think it's real mad at that. I think it's mad that we're asked to be, we're being worked without being compensated. It's not about battling the personalities. It's like we've already given the work that yielded a result that we still can't be compensated. You feel, so that's just human.
and right, and I get it, I understand what you're saying. But what I'm saying is, because we have a limited resource, there's only so much we can give. And then they tell us exactly how to give it, and we don't have control of it.
So I appreciate you sharing that, Scott, because one of our frustrations, and I know we've brought this up at bargaining for several years, and I know we talked about before my car accident. Is there's a disconnect between those of us in this room and those of us that are engaged in this work, and I still have a lot to learn. I mean, I'm nowhere near your level of understanding, right? But I hope to think that I know a little bit. But a lot of our educators who are the ones that are being impacted by these policies and what's happening are not fully aware of what's happening, and these are very complex things. I mean, school budgets and the FEFE, it's very complex.
Yeah.
And I, even more so, the general public. Right, it's really not aware. I mean, I've seen people out in the public saying, just skim the fat at the top, and then you'll solve all your budget problems in your district. And the truth is, we even have educators that say that to us. I mean, when we had the health insurance issues in the past 2 years, where we were putting $10 million for health insurance, we had educators saying to us, why don't they just cut some of the district employees at the top, some of the district leadership, and cut salaries of principals, and then there you solve your problem. Well, the math doesn't math, right? And they don't know that, right? They don't realize that you cut every single district leader and not have enough money to cover that health insurance.
They're all district administrators. that are not in a school, all department-owned administrators, is 2%.
Right,
Of the cost of operating attorney.
right.
That's so, you're pretty lean already, so when you say, oh, just cut the admin, and that's talking school board members. Superintendent, assistant superintendent, CFO. Down all the way to basically every administrator outside of the school. You're still talking about schools.
And so I say that to say. This type of piece that you presented to us today, and the more of that you can do makes a huge difference. So when Tim asked, what can we do together? The messaging and the communication, I believe, and again, I'm just one person with one opinion. The messaging is so important, and we have got to find a way, and I begged and pleaded at the bargaining table last year. We've got to communicate our salaries better, we've got to communicate the district budget better. Our educators and the general public need to understand what's happening. It can't just be behind closed doors when we're sitting in a meeting with the legislator or those on appropriations. We need to do it out publicly, and that's the piece that I think Tim is asking for. We're not asking to battle, we're asking to stand together on messaging and communication about what is the source of the problem and what can we do about it. And I know there's a lot of fears, because everything nowadays is very divisive, it's political. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the health of our communities and our kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like there's things we could do to communicate this better, so
I'll be happy to go to every school and have this conversation. with
I think
everybody.
that would be huge. That would be huge, but having maybe like some Q&A sessions or some videos or some Zoom sessions. I know we did that with health insurance, and Rob was amazing and held some of those health insurance sessions where we had members come and ask questions about health insurance. I think the more messaging and education that we can do, the better understanding and the less nasty grams, hopefully, we will all receive from our members who don't really understand what's happening.
You have to.
Well, we appreciate your time today, and hopefully we got all the questions out, but if anything comes up, we'll follow up with you. And I know that you're gonna get back to us on the question about the 3-year cumulative savings.
Will you do me a favor and email?
Of course.
Before I forget, but you know me.
Yes, and we are, we did ask Sarah to add the agenda today discussion about health insurance. And I know you and I and Jessica have been back and forth about some health insurance pieces, so I'm sure.
Yeah, that was an error on Josh's part. He's already said, oh, yeah, but we're getting transcripts, so we can clearly understand exactly what everybody said.
Okay,
We'll get together on that.
okay,
But yeah, it was, the 750 came in because we were talking about moving into HDI. There's not enough savings when we kept it with Blue Cross and Blue Shield just on 750. So let's see where we end up at. So again, it's more money that's gonna come off the table.
So that's all the update that I had. I was gonna print the sheet with the red line, basically saying that it will say it was not offered, but we were looking at transcripts. So now that he said it, that's pretty much what I had on the agenda. And we're gonna get back to you because we're looking at the transcript, but if you go back to the documents that we were voting at the committee, you can see that
And
on a-
it's 750.
no, but on the red on the corner, upper left corner, you see what they actually was being offered was not 750. So there was an error from the way the documents were created. Just, we'll be back in communication with that.
Yeah, and I sent him the one that we got that we voted on, and it had 750 in there. It just wasn't in red. It was just in black.
Thank y'all, teachers and everybody for coming up here during your time off.
Appreciate it.
Summer. I appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
That will come later when we do the transcript on voting, but on the original committee meeting, it had, if you go back to the actual, all the plans before we voted, had red text on the upper left corner. So do you want me to forward you this copy with the red of what it will changes?
So,
There's a couple more things that I need
Oh.
to discuss in it,
okay,
so let me pass
and
that.
we did have questions about that, because I mean, if it was an error, like Jessica said, it was on the documents that Gallagher provided at
Correct.
the committee meeting.
Correct.
And it was on board docs, so what is the rules or guidelines about when the.
It happens, when I have an error on board docs, we replace the document with the correct version and an explanation. So it doesn't mean that that's it. Like, if we've had documents that have been in error before, and we just correct them. But before we make a correction, we're gonna get to the bottom line evidence with the
Okay.
transcript. So that's all. But I
And
wanna,
with the correction, does the board have to re-vote,
no,
or how does that?
no, if it's just an error, we'll just correct the document. It's already. They approved the committee's decision. That's what they approved.
Okay.
The document is just supporting evidence. Okay, so whatever the committee voted, which was option 2, I believe. If I recall correctly.
I don't know. the
Well, I don't wanna,
numbers.
exactly, let's wait for the transcript.
Okay,
What I wanted to discuss on the form that you provided is that there's a couple of things that we needed to make note. The deductible that are there are for in-network. The co-pays and co-insurance that are there are for in-network. The office visits is reference to the primary care physician office visit. And the pharmacy generic and the pharmacy preferred, that's the amount for a 30-day supply. It's a different amount if it's 60 or 90. Okay, so I wanted to address that if you were using those numbers.
I do have one question though, because, for HPI, it doesn't matter if it's in network or out of
And
network.
it, correct, but you had all 3 plans, so we will have to address it accordingly.
Okay.
So we'll put a line, we'll do something under, HPI specifically.
Correct, we will have to address it per plan.
Yeah,
So with that said, this is not final, obviously, we're still coming back to it. So I know that as Mr. Ward said, we're reviewing the transcript to make sure that we have the correct information. Okay,
should this say?
so for HPI only, it's in that.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah.
all right, but I believe for the other plans, it's different.
Yeah, it is for the other plans.
So
So
those are little notes.
Same here.
Yeah, so we can just put it, actually, we can put it in the titles.
That's true.
And that is something that we need to make sure it was noted if you were gonna use that.
Yeah.
I also think adding the 30-day supply is helpful there too.
Mhm.
There's a lot of confusion about that for the prescription benefit.
Again, I don't
Can
know,
we add the 60 and 90 day versus too?
I have no idea what that would be something that.
Yeah.
Well, we have a meeting with them on Thursday, so we.
Perfect, so ask them that question, they'll be the ones to tell you exactly what the amount is.
Yeah, we'll flip it this way, so it's more room.
Was that part of your health insurance discussion?
This was, but we did have something else. You want to talk about that now or after?
If you want to, that way we can at least finish with health and then
Okay,
I'll take whatever information you have because I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer it,
okay, that's something that's been around.
okay?
I'm trying to remember the timeline, because a lot has happened in these 3 weeks. But I know you and I had a phone call, we had talked about the contract language for health benefits and communicating to the health
And
benefits.
they were, I believe Benefits was in communication with you to get you that information.
So I was gonna, share that we had talked about when the healthcare plans were gonna be on the board docs. That was approved on 7/13, I wanna say. We had reached out to benefits meeting about what is the benefit communication gonna look like. There were some updates about the website and the benefits, packet. Bobby, I believe, met with Mr. Suber the week after 4th of July.
Okay.
When she was meeting with Mr. Suber, we were under the impression that Bobby would see all that messaging and communication, but she did not.
Okay.
And then this week, one of our members actually found on the district website the new benefits packet information, which
Okay.
we had not been communicated that information was even up yet. All we have is basically the one pager that we created from board docs. So what's being passed out now is contract language that we agreed to about messaging and communication about health insurance benefits. And Scott Ward spoke to this too, about how health insurance has become an ongoing issue, not only in our district, but really nationwide and statewide. And one of the main drivers of this contract language was making sure that educators were, and really all employees, because it's an all employees health plan, not just instructional staff, were communicated with about the changes. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate, we're gonna reiterate this again on Thursday when we meet with Mr. Suber and Marisol of benefits, that ideally, based off the contract language, it should be 10 days prior, right, or 10 days after any change. And so our concern now is we are less than 7 days from open enrollment. And there hasn't really been much communication about the health insurance plans. I looked at last year's, and it looked like last year's actually went out in district email 3 days before open enrollment. So we know health insurance is becoming an increasing challenge for folks to pay for and an increasing cut in their salary. So I think if we can just get some messaging out as soon as possible,
So I will leave here today and go see Mr. Ward first thing tomorrow morning.
that would be great.
Okay? To see what we can do immediately.
That would be great.
Okay? No problem.
Anything else on that?
I thought you would get that information. I was under that impression, so obviously,
And I don't, and what's kind of confusing is they already put it out on the district website,
I was not aware of
26,
that.
27,
I just remember
but,
having a click on it yesterday.
yeah,
Like, oh.
and it's not, but it hasn't been emailed out to everybody.
Okay.
The only thing we've gotten is to save the date, or open enrollment
Open
date,
enrollment.
save the
And
date.
it was yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday, I found it, I don't know when we put it on Friday, well, I had to click on it yesterday, no, 26, 27.
It wasn't there a couple weeks ago, because I did look, but, because I thought, oh, maybe I missed it.
Okay. Again, we will be getting back to you.
Sounds good. And I apologize, I was not aware that you were coming to the table today with changes on what you presented.
I was because you wanted the bands.
So I thought you were gonna email that to us. So when I saw your.
And I said, but then I started writing it and then making sure that all the language, and then I started reviewing our notes. I needed to add a language to guarantee that all funds would be used.
Okay,
For
we
this.
also worked on.
So do you wanna see, which one do you wanna see
Yeah,
yours?
we can let them
Theirs
choose
Yeah.
and ours.
And then we'll learn, we can make it work
Let's get it at the same time.
And
Uh,
then they'll work on
let's do-
putting-
Let's do one, let's
Okay.
just pass mine and then I'll show you what I did.
Okay.
Yep, so, yeah, this one. That's that one.
Mr. Frazier, would you like to come sit closer with us?
Why did you shower? Anybody out of here?
Well, you're welcome to join now that you're all.
The AC is broken.
Oh.
Oh, no.
So I probably don't do
Well, was it very middle?
I'm going public school now.
Yes.
Our school may be old, but our AC's working.
I'm telling you that. Thought it mattered, but it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So to make things, I'm gonna go explaining all this MOU. I'm basically gonna explain what I changed, okay? Is that okay? Or would you like me to go from the beginning?
No.
Okay. The MOU as written, like I presented last week, is the same all the way to where it says distribution of funds, okay? And then that paragraph where it's distribution of funds, that paragraph stays the same. What I added was that first bullet under it. LCEA elects to have LCS to process and distribute the allocated funds to qualifying classroom teachers according to years of full-time teaching experience using the following experience band. Band A, at least 10 but fewer than 15 years of service, $1,300. Band B, at least 15 but fewer than 21 years of service, $2,000. And band C, 21 or more years of service, 3,000. Before I move on, is that correct?
Mostly,
Those were the,
yeah.
that's what you had in the last proposal. That, okay, so then. First bullet that I added there that you see, I'm gonna read it and then I'm gonna explain what it means. The full-time teacher, I'm sorry?
What is full time?
Okay.
Yeah, that first bullet is completely new, that's new.
Okay.
These two next bullets are brand new, okay? The full-time teaching experience band amounts should be adjusted based on the number of qualifying classroom teachers in each band as of the date certain of September 15, 2026. Provided that in no event should the total amount dispersed across all bands exceeds the CTSIA adjusted portion of 1,700,000. If the aggregate amount that would otherwise be dispersed exceeds that amount, the amount payable under each band should be reduced by the same proportion. An equal percentage applied across all bands so that the total amount dispersed does not exceed the $1.7 million. Conversely, if the aggregate amount that would otherwise be dispersed using the band amount set forth above is less than the CTSIA adjusted portion, the band A and band B amounts should each be increased by the same proportion. An equal percentage applies to band A and band B so that the total amount dispersed does not exceed CTSIA adjusted portion, provided that band C amount should remain $3,000 and should not be increased. And in no event should any band amount exceed the $3,000 per teacher cap. Any amount remaining after this adjustment should be treated as remaining funds as set forth below. That whole paragraph, all it means is that, for instance, the amounts that I first discussed with you were band, and there were 286, 268, and 312. That total 866 teachers. That means band A, B, and C, because that came out to 1.843, 1,843,000. We're not exceeding that cap. That means that I would adjust band A from 1,300 to 1,198.61, band B from 2,000 to $1,844.02, and band C 2,766.03. Together, that would equal the 1.7. Okay,
What did you say B was?
the 2,766.03.
I thought that was band C.
Band C is 3,000, yes. So,
Can you read that? Can you say that again?
Okay, A is what?
so for instance,
I'm sorry, I'm a visual person.
okay, if band A had 286 teachers and band B had 268 and band C had 312,
Right,
the amount will come out to 1,843,000.
right.
We know that, okay?
Say, oh, yeah, we got the, no, he just did he did it from the higher end.
Yeah, we were the higher.
Yeah, I did it backwards. I put the lowest, then the next, and then the highest at the bottom. That's all.
So C, band C is how many educators?
As an example, I put 312,
Okay.
okay?
Okay, so what would be the totals of that?
Because of that paragraph that I wrote, all it means is that proportionally, I cannot exceed the 1.7. So if I readjust it, if you divide 1.7 divided by 1.843, it comes out to a 7.8% reduction, which means it would be the band A at 1,300 will go to $1,198.61. Band B would go to $1,844.02. Band C would be $2,766.03, leaving zero remaining funds. Okay. Also, let's suppose Mr. Ward goes and calculates and DOE sends the money. Okay. And they say that we don't have 1.7, we have 1.9. The same applies. What will happen is then band A will increase to 1,380, band B would be 2,123, and band C will stay at 3,000 because I cannot go any further. All that paragraph did was guarantee the adjustment would be done to make sure we spend all the money.
Gotcha.
All right, so now, second bullet that I added is, I'm gonna read it and then I'm gonna explain it. The CTSIA adjusted portion of 1.7 reflects the first FBFP calculation and it's an estimate. If the amount actually allocated to LCS district by Florida DOE for CTSIA teacher salary increases for this year, less the FBFC calculation, less the charter school allocation, is ultimately determined to be greater or less than 1.7, the CTSIA adjusted portion and all corresponding amounts and calculations under this MOU shall automatically adjust to equal that actual allocated amount without the need for further amendment. The experience band amounts should then be adjusted in the manner described above so that the total amount dispersed does not exceed the actual CTSIA adjusted portion, subject to the per teacher cap and the treatment of remaining funds set forth herein. The parties intend that this MOU be processed given full effect in accordance with the actual allocation, whether CTSIA is more or less than the amount stated. All I'm saying in there is that we will follow the MOU with whatever allocation we get. If it's 1.9, 1.8, 1.7, whatever it is, we're just gonna follow it through.
So. We were talking about Lake Tech earlier, so that I can understand this, so.
That would be it. If, let's say they don't have enough funds to pay those amounts, that is a Lake Tech issue that they need to provide funds. That
So-
won't be, it won't affect the teachers.
So that's what I'm saying is like, let's say in that 312 number of the top band. 5 teachers were Lake Tech teachers, so that money would not come out of the 1.7. That's what that's.
Whatever small portion they get allocated
Uh-huh.
will be from that 1.7, but to pay them the up to 3,000, they will have to put the rest.
So they don't get,
So they're only gonna get a small portion at 1.7.
The charter school will get a small
That's what we
portion,
meant.
correct, that's all, but we're still, the teacher will get whatever amount is in this MOU, no matter what.
right, the teacher will get that,
Mhm.
but what I'm asking is how does that affect the one, so, because we're saying 3,000 towards the 1.7, coming out of the 1.7.
Correct, they're
But you're
employees of Lake
saying
County.
that not all of their 3,000 comes out of the 1.7 because they get funding.
No, what Mr. Ward was saying is their funding is different. So they get not all of it. It's like 100% funding for a regular FTE at a regular school. So what would happen is they still get some FTE. That portion that they get will be used to cover their teachers, but they're gonna have to meet up the rest to pay.
So if they have somebody that's like a 0.4.
Yeah, they're gonna
over
have to,
there, they will get 0.4 of $3,000.
correct,
And then the other, that's what I'm trying to understand.
correct.
So then the other 0.6, they would have to.
They
come
will
up
have to
with
provide it because they're
to
late,
equal the 3,000 to that teacher,
correct.
but only the 0.4 will come out of.
Their
The
funding.
regular. school.
Because they get funding, we have to provide them whatever their allocation is.
So what about so my next question is, what about the money that they're not getting? What happens to that money? Is that gonna be added to the calculation to the other teachers? Be able to,
So,
No,
so,
this is only applies to any teacher who's a classroom teacher by job code.
no, I
okay,
understand
so
that.
I know how to figure that out. Because if they're only a 0.4, they don't count as 1. So if you look at 312, okay, they're not a 1.0, they're just a 0.4.
But you're speaking about budget and
Yeah.
budget has nothing to do with this. Regardless of whatever allocation portion they get, we're gonna pay their teachers if they
No,
meet the criteria.
I understand that. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, if in our numbers, we're counting them. Okay,
Mhm.
so if they had 5 teachers on here that are getting the 3,000, that's $15,000.
Mhm.
But they only are getting a
Let's say
quarter
half
of the allocation. What about that leftover money that they're not getting? What happens to that?
They
money?
have to come up with that money from the.
No.
What happens to
And
the
it
money
needs to
that
be
we're
relevant
including in this?
So in other words, if you look at the 1.7 and every time you pay a teacher 3,000, it comes out of it, right? But their teacher might only get 1,000 of that, so there would be 2,000.
So maybe
That's
maybe,
still left over for the other teachers that.
all right, let me explain different. The 1.7 was for the traditional schools. I have to double check with Mr. White to see if the portion from Lake Tech was put in that number. And if it is, great, it's coming from the same pot. If it's not, we're gonna add it. No matter what, they're gonna get their portion. The teacher will get their portion. And the reason that I wrote the second bullet is to make sure that whatever the correct allocation is, we would follow through the MOU accordingly.
So because Lake Tech is charter, it would be part of that charter pot.
correct,
So then that amount essentially you'd be adding it into the 1.7.
Correct.
So that so if
From that charter. cost.
yeah.
200,000 was coming over, then it would be.
It will be that, but again, I will have to check to see when he gave me that amount, whether that amount included the Lake Tech.
So,
Yeah.
basically what you're saying is when we figure out the numbers in September, you're not gonna include Lake Tech in these numbers. For this. Because they wouldn't be getting any of the 1.7. And even if.
Or I put their pot into the
Either
one
way.
point seven.
Either way it comes out.
Yeah, but if you put their pot in and it's not, but that's the thing, you can't put their pot in because their pot isn't gonna pay for the whole 3,000.
No,
They're
but
gonna have
part
to.
of
It depends on the allocation.
They're gonna have to come up with the difference to add it to the pot.
They have to.
So, when we get into the nitty gritty of this, could you just indicate like this amount is for the Lake Tech folks?
Correct, if you wanna know that information, we can get you that information, but I will not only put the low amount, I will have to put the whole pot. They
Right,
will have to supplement that amount.
right.
They have to put it in their budget.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I understand what you're saying. I
I just
have,
wanna make sure that we are budgeting, that we are spending the money that if we're counting. $3,000 for all these teachers out of this pot of money. Then it's all coming out of this pot of money. If we're not accounting for it for this pot of money, then it should be counted for this pot of money, that rest of that money should be.
so let me put it to you this way.
Put.
All the traditional schools pot of money would be this amount, the charter schools have a different pot,
Right.
but they're employees of Lake County Schools, their pot might be smaller. They have to supplement it to make sure they use
Yes,
it.
I get that.
So they-
We just
And
simply
shouldn't
that,
count it
like,
as a
this is the
credit.
charter cost,
Yes,
Yes.
that would be good.
correct.
Okay.
So then the third bullet, no changes, it's the same third bullet that I had in the original MOU, notwithstanding the foregoing. The salary increase provided to an individual or teacher under this allocation shall not exceed 3,000. And then the last bullet in that section, I added the last sentence. If the school district has any funds remaining after providing the salary increases, the school district must use these funds to provide salary increases to instructional personnel or for increased costs related to personnel compensation. I got that from the law, but regardless, because I have a bullet at the top that says that I'm gonna guarantee spending the funds on salary increases, there should not be any conflict. The rest of the agreement is the same. So
So when would like, when everything's an estimate, when, not an estimate for the amount? Like, when is the, pot finalized?
we have an allocation, I just have to get with Mr. Ward. And DOE doesn't release the funds to us until we have a plan agreed on. Ratified and board approved, then they submit the fund. Once we get,
But that would be so that's the count number.
that's the cap number based on the preliminary budget report that they put.
So are you saying?
So after so based on, after this out, so we get, after we approve the plan, they give us a number, and that's our allocation.
It's
But
1.7.
Okay, but then if we think it goes up or down, that's when the estimate.
It's
then-
because it's. I'm
If the enrollment goes
covering,
up in October and our amount goes up, then.
Correct.
Does this 1.7 also go up later?
that's what the second, that's
Okay,
what the
that's what
bullet
I'm saying,
says,
so-
yes. Yes,
So initially, it's probably 1.7, but.
but if it by some remote chance is more than that, then I will adjust.
The next question is, so how would these be paid out then? Because if it could go down later. When would the salary increase be?
No,
provided?
we'll get it now, DOE will release the allocation to us to distribute immediately to salary. Chances, when I say go up, is when we request the money, if their calculation is differs from whatever they first reported. That's what I mean, we'll have the final amount by the time I disperse. That's what,
When does the district receive the funds?
once they get an approved plan in their hands,
So after October first, basically, or
basically. And then we'll process it immediately, retro from the beginning of the contract through whenever we process, and then the rest spread out, just like performance pay.
what's the turnaround typically between when you submit the plan, when the district receives the funds?
Once they get the template that we submit to them with the approved plan, they go ahead and the way that I understand it is that finance will get that communication to request the funds. And typically they'll get the funds so we can start processing.
So is it like a week turnaround, like 2 weeks?
Exact dates, I would have to ask him exact dates on that. I do know that I read on the guidance that the DOE will not release funds to any district until they have an approved and ratified plan submitted to the state.
Which I understand that, I guess, I was just wondering, what is the turnaround between when we give the district or give the state the plan versus when they actually give it out?
So my goal is, once we send the plan to them and it's ratified, I'll start testing them until they tell me that we got the funds. For us in HR, it's very easy for us to process immediately.
But you
And
wouldn't process until you receive funds,
until I
right?
receive the
So
funds.
it could be mid-October before you receive the funds. or-
Could be, potentially it could be, or it could be that I send them the update by August like they want. And then by October 1st, I finalize the plan and the funds will be released immediately.
Well, I mean, no matter what, you wouldn't be able to process the funds until after September 15th, right? So even if we agreed to something today, submit a plan,
I couldn't do anything until you ratify the plan.
right, but also until September 15th, because
Correct,
that's the day of the
correct,
contract.
Correct, correct.
So no matter what, you
I
know,
have to wait until after September 15th.
yeah,
I submit the plan right after, let's say you ratify by then,
yeah.
I submit, or before I submit the plan to them. Hopefully, I can process in October immediately. That's
So
my
no
goal.
matter what, we're probably looking at
At
October.
Late October, that's what I'm.
Okay.
We were just gonna get the one.
Oh, I just.
Yeah, we had it ready to pass down.
But that's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. That
He
was-
did get one. I was.
But it was our.
There's
Ours.
He an outlier.
Those are the boards.
Yeah.
Apologize.
He'll look
The
it up.
ones are,
I was just looking out for it.
So,
Yeah. Right here.
yes.
So what was being passed out is our, changes and adjustments based off last bargaining session. And I just wanted to reiterate. Both sides of the negotiation table has been put in a very difficult situation, and I know we both know that, and I know. Unfortunately for both myself and you, Guido, we've had a challenging experience as chief negotiators jumping into things. But our intent is to bargain in good faith. Our intent is to present a plan that makes sense based with the data that we're given. To make sure that we present a plan that makes sense financially for the district, and we heard what you had presented at the table last time and tried to come up with a plan that we feel like both sides can agree on. And so we've added some language that we feel is necessary and needed to be able to move forward with a proposal that our educators and instructional staff can stomach, as well as the district. So you're gonna see bold and underline are this language that we've added, and then red and struck through is language that we've removed. There are a couple typos that we're gonna point out. So just keep your eye for that, and we'll make sure we point out those typos as they come up. And then a couple questions that we're gonna ask for your clarification on, because again, we're not human resources, so we have a couple questions for human resources and payroll purposes. So, that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica as well as Bobby and Patrick to kind of explain the new language here.
Okay, so we added the purpose and background, and this is for clarification for our educators to know exactly by law, this is where the money has to be sent, so that's why we did that. So the provisions of this agreement are governed by state laws and Florida Department of Education guidance regarding the use of classroom teacher salary increase allocations, TSIA funds. The board and the association enter this agreement under those limits. The following information provides the basis of this agreement. The Florida legislation allocates TSIA funds for the 26-27 school year. These funds are restricted by state law and Department of Education guidance. The board and association may use these funds only as permitted by the state of Florida. State law limits CTSIA eligibility to classroom teachers as defined by statute who have at least 10 years of verified full-time teaching experience in a Florida public school and who meet all the other state eligibility requirements. Teachers who are not classroom teachers are defined by statute or who do not have the required Florida public school teaching experience are not eligible for these funds, even if they are otherwise certified, experienced, or employed in instructional roles. Because of these state imposed restrictions, approximately 2/3 of the district's teachers are not eligible to receive any portion of the 26-27 CTSIA funds. This exclusion results from the state eligibility criteria. The board and the association do not have the authority to expand eligibility or use CTSIA funds for teachers who are not classroom teachers as defined by the statute, or who otherwise do not qualify under the state law or DOE guidance. Accordingly, the parties enter into this agreement to distribute the available CTSIA funds to eligible teachers, ensuring the funds are used as required by law, and create a clear record of how the funds were allocated and why many educators were excluded from this allocation. I wanted to make sure that our educators realize this was state legislation and not the board or the union making these requirements, so that's why we added all that. We did add to your first bullet, the total amount, with including a fringe rate. That was the amount that Scott Ward presented at our last meeting that he was here. And then we added the fourth bullet. CTSI funds may only be distributed to classroom teachers who were employed by LCS for the 25-26 school year and meet all other eligibility requirements. LCS qualified employees on leave who return from leave during the 25-26 school year will receive a or 26-27, sorry. Yeah. And will receive a prorated portion of the CTSIA salary increase. When we added the next bullet, this adjustment creates a permanent reoccurring salary increase for educators who meet all eligibility requirements applied to the 26-27 CTSIA growth funds only. The terms of the MOU do not apply to educators who become eligible in the future years unless a negotiator required by, and we want to cross out future, and then that and just put statute. Sorry,
There were all letters there.
Yeah.
I really apologize.
So or required by future. no,
By statute.
By statute.
By future
Just by-
statute.
Just by statute.
Okay.
And then, under the distribution of funds, we cross it out where LCA shall have the full discretion all the way through full-time teaching experience. And then we added distribution is based on the years of Florida public teaching experience, identify the number of instructional employees in each experience band to include the most recent year of experience prior to the current school year. We did 10 to 14, 0.44 supplement factor, 15 to 20, 0.66 supplementary factor, and then 21 plus would be a 1 supplementary factor.
It's essentially the same calculation you did, but in a different way.
No, but it's a factor.
It shouldn't say supplement, it just says factor.
Yeah, it should be, say,
So
yeah,
cross off the word supplement.
sorry. I took that language from the other MOU that we were using,
Yeah.
and changed.
Let's just say that.
Supplement.
The next line too, so during the educator fact, so to determine the educator factor by multiplying the number of educators in each instructional experience band by the corresponding factor. Divide the total number of funds available by the total educator factor. Multiply the amount determined by the factor plus out supplement for each band to determine the individual amount. Should be supplemented. And then we added the last bullet, before any, it should say CTSIA salary adjustment amount is implemented. LCS and LCA must mutually agree to the calculations, including the total CTSIA, sorry, wrong letters there. Funds, employer fringe benefit cost, number of eligible teachers, estimate gross adjustment, and any remaining funds. LCS may not unilaterally change the calculation method, final adjustment amount, reconciliation of payment, or distribution of remaining funds. If a change is required by law, by state law or FLDOE guidance, the change must be negotiated with the LCA if allowable by law. And then we put in that the figures are estimates, for the 26-27 year only and may change based on the funding, verified eligibility, required employer costs, and FLDOE guidance. And then we did the 21 with the 1.0 factor, and we estimated between 28 and 3,000. And then the 15 to 20, our bands are the same. 0.66 factor, approximately $1,800 to $1,900. And then the 10 to 14 years would be a 40.44 factor, and it would be $1,100 to $1,200. And the estimates, the amount is not guaranteed. The final amount will be determined consistent with this agreement after the parties review the LCS TSIA allocation. CTSIA allocation, verified eligibility, required employer costs, and any other state requirements. And then we added the next bullet we added was remaining compensation negotiation. LCS intends to return by September 1st, 2026 to begin good faith negotiations regarding the remaining components of the compensation package, including but not limited to performance pay, supplemental compensation, incentive compensation, and future compensation increases. The parties shall negotiate in good faith to complete such negotiation and execute any mutually agreed upon written amendment to this agreement no later than October 1st, 2026. Every effort shall be made by LCS to identify general fund dollars for additional compensation for the approximate 2,000 educators exempt from the CTSIA to match or go beyond the total amount that has been allocated for STCIA, taking into consideration enrollment and budget changes. And then we added the last bullet, and I have a clarification question on this last one. It says the TSA salary adjustment will be divided into, is it 20 or 21 pays? For the low, that you can choose from. I know 24, but what's the other one?
Most teachers that I know are 24. I haven't seen any other one, so.
But they still have the
They sell the option.
option, right?
Yeah, so whatever that number is what that's supposed to be.
Either 20 or 21.
I'll get two, I think you're right, 20 and 24.
Well, I did
21.
That's what our confusion
That's what
was.
our confusion is.
But double check that.
Yeah, so if you could just check and let us know.
When they're checked.
Full installments as the instructional employee has elected. Because the payment will not begin with the August 30th paycheck, all missed installments will be paid retroactively with the first CTSIA payment.
The payment or not?
And then we may want to change.
Oh, and then we added, should this MOU be found to be non-compliant with state law, the parties agreed to negotiate any necessary changes, and we took out immediately because,
Car accidents happen.
yeah.
And that's kind of a nebulous. So
Yeah.
Any questions?
There's a lot here to process.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question? You said that I gotta find it again. There was a prorated portion. So page 2. Funds may only be distributed to classroom teachers who were employed. So when they're on qualified leave, who return from leave during that year, they will receive what prorated portion?
Whatever the prorate is, that however long they work, they prorate any type of pay for that. So if they come back in, October, they would only get 3/4 of it for their salary, so whatever that would be.
And is it clear on that bullet, Kirsten, where it says and meet all other eligibility requirements that they would also have to be employed in 26, 27?
Or 20,
Is that clear?
25, the 25, 26 year.
Well, it's 25, 26, and
Well, then they would have to come back.
They would
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
come back.
so is that clear there, or do we need to clarify that?
I think it's clear, but I still have conversation about it because I just have conversation. Thank you.
So our goal in adding the the language at the beginning for the purpose and background is really so that. Those that are gonna be voting on this understand that this MOU is limited by the state law. And then, the other, most of the other language that we added was, you know, to try to make things as clear as possible. Because not everybody watches, bargaining happening. And then, we wanted to have something where people could kind of have an idea of what the, what the amount would be. So the table is just an estimate there, there for that. And then at the very, end, on the last page, because everyone in our bargaining gets to vote on this, MOU, we want to be a little more explicit about the fact that this is not the end of compensation bargaining. We did have it in the one that you gave us, but we really wanted to make it as clear as possible that both LCS and LCEA are committed to finding something for every educator.
Because again, you know, when we have 2,000 educators are getting this money and everybody has to vote. Right there, if everyone who's not getting anything decides to vote no, we're out. And we have to go to impasse, and that also looks like it's, no, we're not bargaining in good faith. And we don't wanna do that, so we wanna make sure that we can do everything we can to get this passed by our members, by our bargaining unit.
Yeah,
I get it.
I'm not in disagreement with you, I understand. My only concern, and I'm gonna voice it, is it's hard enough for employees to understand factors. I'm gonna be honest with you. They rather see just the number and they get it. They might not understand the bullet that I added, but they understand that it will be basically prorated. When you start putting factors and then you put an example table, people get confused. They get confused when I explain them their contract when they're 196 and 202, 206, 199, they get lost. So, and that's factors. So I just don't know, some of the other language, like at first glance, I have to first read it through a couple of times and it looks like we are there, okay? My only concern is the factor, okay? So.
Well, and to your point, you know, that was our fear, like with what you had put for the bands, when you had put, you know. B and A, at least 10, but fewer than 15, 1,300, we're putting a number in there. And that was our fear of putting like a solid number, because people are gonna see, oh, 1,300, I'm supposed to make 1,300. And so that's why we try to create this range where potentially you can make anywhere between 2,800 and 3,000, depending upon what the numbers end up. So we're trying to give room for, okay, this is what you might expect, but don't expect just 300 or just for 3,000.
In all honesty, the numbers should be 1,200, 1,850, and 2,750. That would guarantee a number. And it will leave probably, depending on the people that qualify, it might leave a few thousands off, but it will be a solid number that they will get.
So if I'm hearing what you're saying, and it was interesting when you were giving us your calculations, it was pretty much right in line with what we were seeing is could we put in a sample and say this is a sample of what the amounts like?
Yeah, part of the sample, like, I'd rather not put samples on the MOU, I'd rather just put samples on communication.
Okay, then that would be fair.
But that would be fair, but when you put bands, like, I only put the 1,300 and the 2,000, because that's what. Those are the numbers that you provided to me, and those are the ones that you look like you wanted to see on the document, so I did. But when you do the math, it has to be proportionally adjusted. So when you look at it, if it's the same 866 employees based on last year's positions that they had that they rolled over to the same position, it would be those amounts that I said about 1,200, 1,850, and 2,700, 2,750. So that is for that, but I know that there's people that shifted positions and roles, so I do not know exactly what that qualifying number would be until we pull data on September 15th. So that's where I'm at.
And the other communication piece that I also want to share, another reason why we put the range is the state of Florida has put out that 3,000 number. So now educators are latching on to that 3,000 number. So, and our belief is that it's gonna be problematic if they don't see that there is a potential to reach that 3,000.
Correct.
So if we just put 2,750 down, they're gonna say, well, what happened to the 3,000? I thought I was guaranteed 3,000. So that's again, another reason why we want to put the range. So even if this isn't in the MOU, but it's in communication, I think that there is value in including a range.
I think our band's in.
One,
Oh, the year
The
band,
band, the
yes.
year band, he
Yes.
doesn't know you.
Well, yeah,
The amount,
yeah,
yeah,
it is.
it is.
it is.
So I'm just saying not with the amounts.
Yeah, and I didn't put 14, I put less than 15 because people will argue, well, I have, it rounds up to 15 or it rounds up.
Right.
So that's why I wrote it the way that I wrote it, to
Yeah.
guarantee
No,
that.
I like that.
There are any questions about that as,
So
rounding or not rounding?
I'm going with whatever the state and whatever the formula is for experience. So
Can we ask you another question about coding again? Just want to make sure I heard you correctly for clarification. If somebody's coded, where they're a half coach, for instance, and half teacher, you're gonna fund them, they would get it as if they're on your teacher, correct?
they are a funded in a job code that has a classroom position.
Uh-huh.
So yes, they will qualify.
Even though they're only half.
Yes, I'm not going to the roster level.
So,
Because I don't know what have a way, if I'm gonna be verifying teachers that are presently teaching, I don't have a way of verifying teachers that have 10 years of experience in the class. So the only way that I can keep it fair is I don't verify that. That's how I can keep it fair.
okay, so my next question is, if that's the case, to help those teachers that are in that job code that doesn't necessarily align with it, is there any way that the codes can be adjusted where you are coding them for a half position as a teacher and a half position as that other one, so that they get that?
So I'm gonna tell you 3 different points that I have an issue with that, okay? Point number 1, the more people that are qualified, the less money they get. That's the first one. They're not gonna get the 3,000 because you're gonna have to readjust. You're gonna have so many people qualifying, but the pot still stays the same. Right?
Do we
So-
know how many? I'm just curious.
It's
how many
300, it's about 300 people right now that we're looking at that don't
That have 10
qualify.
plus years, but not enough.
And that's the problem, they have the 10 years and they don't
But it can
qualify.
be potentially more than that, okay? It can be potentially more than that. So I have those people that are there. So let's take that aside. Budget wise, allocations are allocated to a school based on different grants, general funds. Literacy coaches, for instance, we get reading dollars, okay? If I move a literacy coach to a classroom position, I cannot use reading dollars to fund that position.
What if you, but that's what I'm saying, you code them half and half. So like, for instance, if her and I are teaching, I'm a literacy coach and she's a classroom teacher, you code me for half literacy coach and half teacher and her.
But
for
that's
the
not
half.
what's happening. That I'm actually circumventing the system and I'm unethically doing something wrong. Because that teacher's not being a literacy coach. So you're asking me to do something that's not happening true in the school. So.
Problem is that that's
Well,
happening.
I'm not going to be voting to, same thing with a teacher that wants to be a program specialist, that wants to be a classroom teacher, but they're on an extended day contract. If I move them to classroom, they lose salary. They're asking for a demotion for them to qualify for money, so they only get the difference. I already talked to someone and explained that scenario to that person, and if they are, and that's where factors come into play, because a contract spread out into 24 paychecks, goes by number of days. A teacher, a classroom teacher is 196. Every ESC school specialist is 199. Every program specialist, some of them are 199, some of them are 202, some of them are 206. Those extra days are additionally to their salary, and it's calculated like that. So if they are teaching a class and I move them to classroom, they lose pay.
But how would you do the half scenario in that case then?
They will have two assignments. One will be classroom, one will be program specialist. If the funding is general funds, then I don't have an issue. I can place them both in general funds. But then the extra 10 days that they lose on the one contract is less salary. So they
they're
lose
losing-
half of the difference,
You're losing half of the extra days?
half of the extra days. Yes, correct. In a 10-day person. See, again, it's fact, like, teachers don't see that. They don't understand
Well,
that.
this is one of the reasons why we keep asking for extra days in the allocation committee and in the contract.
But
Because it's
it
like
has-
this ghost thing that we don't,
it has nothing to do with the extra days. It has to do with a contract gets divided into amount of days. Your salary gets divided into number of days. Your daily rate gets multiplied by every day that you work 7.5 hours. I hate to say it, it's basic math. So if I reduce somebody to a classroom position, I'm taking away salary.
right, but for us to negotiate in good faith, you need to understand that information. We don't have that information. It's not laid out anywhere for us. So that's what I'm talking about. You really need clear transparency on those extra days. Who's receiving them, how many?
Well, sorry,
Teachers know who's receiving extra days. They know their position.
Yeah, they get an email, my understanding, they get an email every year about what those extra days look like.
Correct. And they know that they're getting paid for extra days.
Which is not letting the bargaining unit know and the negotiators know what those days look like. That's a direct email to the direct employee, which is problematic on multiple levels.
So you want a sheet that tells you what positions have number of days?
Yes.
Okay. Please
And
write
how
that
many
down.
days.
Okay, that's fine.
So if a position is actually split, so like at our school, we have a coordinator position that is split between two people, and then both people are teaching. Then on the books, they should both be, have half of the day as coordinator and half of the day as.
Yeah, I only, I'm telling you, I can explain that, but I need names so that I can see, because funding drives the position.
Right. But is there
Budget
anything
drives
that
the-
precludes splitting a position? Is there anything in funding that precludes splitting a position?
Yeah, if I don't have general fund dollars to split that position with somebody else, I can't.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fraser, we, with Title I, I think it is, if it, for some of the coaches, they had to be one person, it could be split. I remember that.
That's correct, under my purpose.
So there are some limitations on some positions.
Funding limits me what I can do. So,
That's what I
and,
was asking.
and that's the hard part of it. I wish I can say that there's an easy way that I can classify everybody's classroom, but I can't.
And what I'm hearing is it could be inconsistent. In other words, like some things are Title I, you can't split, but some things that are general fund.
There's some that I can that are general fund, yes, but there's some that I can, like AP, some are funded through AP funds. There is, ACE is another one, it's a similar one. There's separate funding that provides that position. Now,
But
some of
this
them
year-
are,
I mean, this year though, even at the teacher level, you guys divide up to the high school teacher pay was divvied out by the ACE and AP level. Like I was 0.18 AP funded.
you were a unique one, I looked at yours already. You were funded 3 different ways,
I saw it on my scar page. I was like, oh.
but I don't wanna, that's why I don't
I'm
wanna
just
bring
kidding,
it
that's
up.
what I'm.
It is hard when you have positions like unique positions like yours that are funded differently. Yeah, he's still 7.5 hours, but his budget is his. I cannot use certain dollars.
Thank you for having this conversation, because the bargaining unit needs to hear these things, because these are questions that we're getting asked too. So thank you for taking the time.
And I've spoken to all the teachers that I've been able to speak to. I've explained, there's one actually that I spoke to recently regarding, it's from Leesburg High School regarding that, and I explained contract hours, dates, and we did the math. And it was, for her, it was eye-opening, because she understood finally why.
Can I ask another question? When you give us that list of the extra days and stuff, can we know when they're paychecks are.
Yes.
Because we ran into an incident recently
When
that
they
we,
change jobs.
we thought
Or
that
money.
all instructional staff, their paychecks were from August 30th through August 15th. And then we were told recently that a guidance counselor's was actually July
15th was the last.
to July 1st. And we didn't know that, so we need to know
No,
that,
there's
so.
pay, they.
Yeah.
I think-
Contract.
We have it in a chart form.
Okay, we have, okay, we'll get you that
That's-
information.
Thank you.
Yeah. That this information, is driven by the calendar they're in
Yes.
Okay,
and their start date and end date of their contract. Before I move any further. You gave me this, I don't think I can caucus and get come to an agreement right now. But I
That's
need a date that we can come back and meet within the next few days. I
Okay.
cannot, because we have to work together on an agreement by July 30th.
right.
So, and if I need to side meet with you before that next meeting, I need to do that so we can have an agreement. So can you
So
look
could I
at?
ask, is there anything in this we have to go back to the school board on?
No.
Or- Okay, so we
No,
can.
all this, I can come up to an answer to you
Okay,
and me, even if you wanna have a pre-meeting on language to make sure that we
Okay.
both can have a full-blown meeting
okay,
already with the language agreed on.
that sounds good.
So, and I think we're there.
Okay.
Okay, it's just a matter of deciding. And what day do you have?
You have availability on Thursday?
We're here at 2 for super, but can we do 1 o'clock on Thursday?
That would be tight. We have the. Unless we do the same over at. What does the end of your day look like on the 23rd? Like, are you available after 3?
Yep, I'm available.
Why don't we meet at 3?
That'll probably work better for me.
Okay,
So is that for bargaining or just a meeting?
just a meeting, I think.
And then what days do you wanna?
But y'all available for that? Yeah. All available? Here,
Thursday, yeah.
Thursday at 3? All right, you can do it.
A bargaining meeting at 3?
Yeah.
All right, so then, okay. Can I have a conversation with you tomorrow at some point?
Yes.
I think we're gonna have to do Terry King reps at our office.
Afternoon, like I can,
Can we do it here on Thursday?
that would work, yeah.
Because there's a TV going on at our office.
Okay, so then I'm gonna need you to send an advertisement that we're doing bargaining Thursday immediately. Once we get back. As soon as we get back, we'll do it Thursday at 3, and then are you available to have a phone conversation tomorrow? Like that?
Yes, yes.
That way we can talk back and forth. What time would be good for me to call you? Afternoon. preferably.
11.
Afternoon preferably.
Okay, it would have to be before 2 or after 3.
I can do after 3 to 12 tomorrow.
Okay,
Would that work?
3 p.m.
I'll call your office number.
Okay,
Okay. So, and then we'll have a meeting, a bargaining against session Thursday at 3 p.m. here.
yes.
My team, if you can make it, great. If you can, I understand. I'll go ahead and meet. So we can address. And the only subject that I'm gonna put on that meeting would be the CTSIA.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, unless anything comes up in our discussion with the Duber.
then you can bring it up.
Yeah. Oh, the summer MOU.
I didn't have that ready,
Okay.
because what I did have ready is the other MOU that you wanted me to.
Oh, the referendum. Do you have that today?
Yes, I
Okay.
have that today. Are you ready for me to pass?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and pass.
We have that.
Yes, it should be in your binder.
Or can you email me this file,
The one
The
that
one
we presented today?
that you presented
Yes.
today?
Mr. Fraser, you got one in your binder?
Yeah, he has one in his binder. Yeah, he has one. All right, so let me before I start reading, do you want to look at it first for a few minutes before I start, or?
Yes.
Let me give you a few minutes.
I have a question on 3E when you get to it.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna go through everything, but it's just, I'm
When you
waiting.
get there,
Okay. 3, what, B?
3E,
E, okay,
and it has to do with the payroll question, we discussed that about paycheck.
yeah, okay.
We're ready to go more.
All right. I want you to correct me if I'm wrong with what I'm gonna start saying. I believe you wanted a millage referendum to start sharing information out with the bargaining, correct?
Yes.
All right, our largest concern district-wide is basically putting dollar amounts of money when we don't even know if we're gonna get it or we have it. It gives a perception that it's a guarantee and it's not. So some of the language that's been stricken off this MOU does not reflect necessarily that we disagree, but that is something that we want to discuss when and if the MOU passes, the referendum passes. So it shows a lot of red crossed out, but that's why I'm replacing it with that statement, okay? It's not that we're not in complete agreement or there is a lot of good in this, but at this time, we're not ready to discuss certain parts of it. Now, as far as the first section, do you want me to go through the whole thing or just read the changes?
That's the change.
So we added the word instructional at the first one on the first page. And then on number 1, we added the word instructional there because that's something you have requested to do. Because the referendum only refers to instructional salary increases. It doesn't refer to any other employment type. Okay, then at this time, we're not agreeing that number 2, the 80% of the total, that portion, we're not in agreement. And the letter A, HLCS instructional bargaining unit employees should receive no less. We're not discussing anything regarding any type of number in compensation. The letter B, we crossed out 26, 27 because if approved during this school year, we start getting funds on the following school year. So we might need to come back to that section and be more specific with the timing and the dates. But that's why we crossed 26, 27. Okay. Letter C, the payment is a supplement of the employee's base pay. we crossed out and should be treated as salary, base pay is salary, so it's. And letter E. The supplement will be paid out in the 2 payments a year. The first payment will be paid out by the last paycheck in December, and the second by the last paycheck in June. What was the question?
So are all of our instructional employees getting like the June 30th paycheck, or are some of them, their last paycheck June 15th?
There's a cleanup, it all depends on the position and the calendar they're in. I have to check on that.
Okay, because that's why I'm asking that, because if the last paycheck in June is June 30th, and not everybody is getting the June 30th paycheck.
But that means that we process, and on the last check that we process the closeout of the year, we send that check out to all the employees. So let me double check that.
Okay,
I can double check that, okay? Make a question on that for instruction.
Yes. so yeah.
Number 4. The appropriate portion of the fund should be held to cover costs associated, and then we added with current fringe rate, because the rate changes every year. The portion that we blocked there is because it talks about your supplement factor and the table. And we rather discuss that when and if it's approved, we'll come back to the table and negotiate how you wanna, if this is the way we want to agree on. Okay, so that's why we cross from A to E. On number 6, the parties should convene annually to review this agreement and negotiate the millage instructional employee salary supplement with consideration for years of service. That's the language we wanted to put in there, because that's telling you that we're willing to look at years of service. And the parties agreed to return to the table if and we crossed the 1 because the only portion of the millage that's used for salary increase is a quarter for compensation of instructional employees. So whatever that portion generates is what we will be discussing for salary increases. And number at the back, contingencies, since I changed that to the quarter, it changes to a quarter millage, and then the revenue of that quarter millage, if I recall correctly, Mr. Ward gave you an estimate of about 10 million when we presented what it would generate at the first meeting that he held.
Yeah.
So that we just corrected, the 40 refers to the
Whole millage.
the 0.75, the 3/4. And then the superintendent would establish the Citizens Oversight Committee. And that language refers to an organization being part of the Citizens Committee. I mean, I want you to have input. That's a discussion that we will have at that time. When the superintendent starts setting up that committee, you can have that conversation and then give some input.
so we could maybe agree to some language that says LCA will be able to have representation on the committee. Instead of it being 2 set seats, it could just be,
We're willing to discuss it at that time.
okay.
Right.
I'm not, like, I don't wanna put language that says an organization. The whole purpose of an oversight,
Bargaining unit.
but no, but it's a Citizens Oversight Committee on the funds
And
expenditure.
we are citizens that have
I understand,
negotiated
and that's what I'm saying.
and
You can have input to discuss that with the superintendent for that committee to be, so that there's some representation.
Okay,
What
I
I
think
did-
there needs to be some kind of language in here that says that though, because otherwise it's up for interpretation on whether we have say in that or not.
Well,
Or
at
we
this
call
time,
it-
we're not agreeing with putting that language in it.
And I did also have a question on number 2 on the first page.
Okay,
Could you speak to why the language of the 80% will be allowed to salary supplements and then 20% for insurance was crossed out?
we took the compensation piece of how we're gonna spend the money out of it, just like how much teachers are getting. Again, I'm gonna preface it, it's not like we're disagreeing with everything. There are certain topics that we don't wanna put out there at this time. And when and if the referendum passes, we will come back to it and discuss.
Okay,
All
so
this.
there is still potential to
Yes,
discuss.
there is still
would we
pot-
use some of the funds to deal with.
Correct,
health insurance?
correct, yes. And I can send you that Word document back,
That
but
would
you
be
have it.
great.
You, you want me to send you the one that I have?
Yeah, with the
red?
changes.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be
perfect.
great.
That's fine.
Do y'all have other questions about this? I was just asking.
Oh, no, there's that.
The table in the back, the only reason I crossed it is because since I removed the factor and that's the only
So
reason.
it's really just a supplemental spreadsheet.
Correct, but it was part of what you presented, so I wanted to provide it back.
Can we, oh, wait,
We'll see how that goes. So our intent, and I wanna say thank you for working very quickly to get both the updated TSIA, CTSIA referendum to us, as well as the millage referendum to us. Because I think both of these parts are really gonna help when it comes to messaging and communication to our bargaining unit, so I appreciate you working diligently to get these to us, and our intent is to work on this. And then obviously through our phone conversation tomorrow to get everything prepared and ready, so that way maybe we could potentially sign both this MOU on the referendum. As well as the CTSI language on Thursday. That will be our.
I'll get busy after today to make sure that by tomorrow afternoon, when I call you, I have a way of meeting you or agreeing to the language that you addressed. And then go from there.
Okay, that sounds good.
I will add, if you don't mind, I would rather after Thursday than in the future in the August meetings, then I'll bring the MOU for summer. I'll be ready for that, along with what the other topics that we have.
I think that's fine as long as nothing's changing with summer school payments or.
Nothing has changed.
compensation.
I haven't changed anything. There's nothing that I'm aware that's changing. Summer school's driven by budget and depending, third grade is always the third grade that was in the house and.
On a topic now, so I assume people are getting their paycheck.
Well, that's payroll. I'm waiting for payroll.
Okay,
So,
well, I think that is all that we have at this time. Unless you all have anything else.
okay, so are we okay to adjourn?
Yes.
All right, it is 4:12 PM. July 31st. This concludes today's bargaining session between LCS and LCEA. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.